Keith, I really appreciate you being here today and helping me with this. I've been looking forward to this project for a couple of years now, and my experience in law enforcement, um, it's one of those things. You get the call, you respond, and you want to help this person, but you're limited on the time that you can spend there and the amount of details and understanding you have of the situation, and then you get that next call, and then you move on. And I really appreciate the opportunity we have now at the Department of Public Safety for the university to be proactive, to be more engaged, and to do more, and to have somebody with your experience in this key position of threat assessment and management is just remarkable. Could you share with us a little bit of your background and really vision of what we have an opportunity to do here that is definitely an innovation?
Thank you. Threat assessment and management, which is a initiative that under the Department of Public Safety. Really, what we're trying to do through this initiative is identify those cases that might be on a pathway towards targeted violence, and through what we do through the assessment and management of those cases, prevent that case from ever happening in the first place. So we're really a preventative measure, I would like to think. Sometimes it's hard to quantify our successes. We often don't know if we prevented something, but certainly through our various management strategies, that's our intent, is not to predict but to prevent. I've been in this business for a while, as you know. So I started in law enforcement back in 1984 and retired from domestic law enforcement in about 2004. And then I've had a variety of jobs since, to include working on the Global Anti-Terrorism Assistance Initiative, and some other projects, but all told, I've been in this business about 40 years, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you've asked me recently to head this initiative up, and I appreciate that.
Well, the wealth of experience that you have is just something that makes all the difference, especially when we're trying to do something that we haven't done before, and really is forward-leaning as far as law enforcement and public safety agencies across the country. We've seen some things recently, tragedies that have taken place where individuals have suddenly gone and done something that is, in some cases, horrific to harm others. But we know also that there are those things that we're getting calls on every week, that somebody is suffering because of the behavior that's threatening by somebody else. What I love about what we're doing is just the services that we'll be able to provide to that individual who's going through that stress and that fear of, in a lot of cases, it's a stalking case. But could you share just some insight for us to be able to appreciate what the value is for us to be able to make a difference for those individuals and also the outcomes?
Yeah, like I said, we're trying as a team to identify, ultimately make some sort of an assessment, and then create a management strategy for those people that might be on a pathway towards targeted violence, as in the case that you just mentioned. These recent events, and unfortunately, they're happening on a weekly basis. Yeah. I mean, I on any given day, there's a case out there of targeted violence. And what threat assessment attempts to do is to identify those cases very early on, and then through maybe a bit different management strategy, take that person off of that pathway. And that could include providing different types of resources to include stabilizers and buffers against violence. Maybe that individual is got a specific grievance because they've recently lost their job. Perhaps it's helping that individual get a job that takes them off of that pathway or resolves that particular grievance that they might have. It could be that the behaviors that we're seeing are manifesting out of mental illness. Perhaps the right pathway then is to divert this person into mental health resources, or it kind of goes back to Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs, right? We want to see where we can support and really come at this from a position of compassion and empathy versus punitive. Although sometimes that may be ultimately what the remedy is,
Right.
because there might, the person's behaviors don't leave us any other choice. But certainly, if we can identify that early enough in the process, our hope is that through a comprehensive strategy that we can take that person off of that pathway towards targeted violence.
Yeah. I've, like you, seen individuals who are in crisis, and when you're dealing with them, there's just behavior, and it can be aggressive at times or threatening, and then you run into them later, and it's like a whole
Totally
different
person, right?
And so really, I see the value of what we're doing here, of being able to go from that initial call or interaction or concern and manage this to a point where somebody can really feel on both sides of it safe and moving on.
Yeah, there's kind of, you bring up some interesting points. There's kind of two aspects of that, right? So what is the immediate need? What do we need to do in that moment to divert this from an emergency or an imminent situation to keep people safe? That's
Right.
Obviously what public safety does, and our law enforcement partners do. But then what are we doing long term? How are we helping this individual get beyond the whatever's driving this behavior? And I think that's where threat assessment can truly make an impact. Your officers, they're running call to call. They have limited amount of time and resources to do anything really, in some cases, beyond a temporary fix, which is okay. But once that case then comes to us, we need to look at it more holistically and see if there isn't additional resources that we might be able to put into place. Because again, where we are concerned for the perpetrator as well as the victim, and that might seem like a strange dichotomy, but in helping the perpetrator, we're helping the victim and we're helping the community. So.
Yeah, it's one of those that for us, we know that there's resources beyond just what we have at the Department of Public Safety. And is there a way that your work interacts with some of the other departments and does it feel like it's a group effort and everybody coming together?
Well, and that's really what we're striving for, and what we're building toward is a true partnership with the entire community. So it really takes all of us. A lot of these cases, they come to us through what we refer to as leakage. In other words, I tell you about my plans and about my grievance and how I'm going to make these people pay for what they did to me. It then becomes incumbent upon you to bring that information forward. That's because, in all likelihood, one of our students is going to hear about this long before we do, or our behavioral intervention team on the university side or on the hospital side is going to hear about these behaviors long before we do. And so we really need to work in a partnership so that we're sharing information. We're taking all of that expertise into account when we develop a management strategy to hopefully, again, take this person off of that pathway towards targeted violence and you know, so the next time that you do see that individual, it's night and day difference.
Yeah. The you just bring up another great point is, you know, we've got opportunities out there to be able to help individuals and beyond just that
Well,
call.
it's funny you bring that up, Chief, because as you were saying that, I had a case pop into my mind that we just recently worked, and you're right. You know, sometimes the easy solution, and I don't know that that's an accurate statement, but would be just to simply jail somebody for their behavior. And some, like I say, there are times where that is appropriate. But as you were talking about that, this particular case jumped into my mind. It was a stalking behavior. We had an uncooperative victim, which I understand there's a variety of reasons that a person may not want to cooperate with that criminal investigation, but threat assessment is completely different.
Yeah.
Our investigation is protective in nature, protective both, again, for the perpetrator as well as the victim, so that we can address the behavior. And in this case, we had the stalking behavior, but we also, and we're not in the business of diagnosing mental health issues. What we're looking at is the behavior, but it seemed that some of the behavior was originating out of a mental health crisis. And so, based on that, we were able to engage with a person familiar to this individual and help that person get into the right mental health resources, and as to date has changed that behavior, and we feel like we're in a pretty good place, at least today. And really, that's what threat assessment does, is we take a snapshot in time in this moment, and that's what we base our analysis and our management strategy on. And so sometimes it requires multiple assessments over time.
I've been impressed because there's you've shared with me, you know, cases that you've worked months ago, and now being able to follow up with those individuals and just make sure that everything's still moving forward and in the right directions. And I mean, that makes a difference in a lot of people's lives.
You know, and sometimes it's as simple as a check-in to know that we are trying to come from a position of compassion and empathy, and because any one of us, as you know, can find ourselves in crisis at any moment, and that doesn't necessarily define who we are. It really just speaks to what we need in that moment. So
yeah, well said. You know, on the other side of that, we know from our experience also, and it's always frustrating when someone is harmed by another, and now we go back and, you know, we're investigating the case or what took place and trying to learn sometimes from, you know, what might have been missed. But usually, not always, but usually there's indicators, things that somebody saw or heard somebody say something that had they got the information to somebody who could intervene, especially you just described it so well. You know, it's not always just to make an arrest. In fact, that sometimes is not the way to go. But yeah.
Yeah, you know, and that's really, I guess if I could give a message to our audience out there, that would be, please report it.
Yeah.
Let us take a look at it. Let us determine, you know, if the person does actually pose a threat. That's really what our team is designed to do is understand, because not everybody that makes a threat poses a threat.
Right.
And not everybody that poses a threat makes a threat. And so really that's what we're trying to to identify and assess and ultimately manage to take those people off of that pathway, that active aggressor, if you will.
Yeah.
And really, that's, again, one thing to understand is we're really looking at those cases of predatory violence. And what I mean by that is, it generally starts with a grievance, and then there's ideation, homicidal or suicidal ideation. There's evidence of preparation and planning. And really, when it gets to that preparation and planning phase, that's when we're heavily relying on our partners out there in the community to bring that information forward, because again, they're most likely going to see it before we do. That could be a social media post, that could be a comment, could be a lot of different things. But don't minimize it, don't discount it. It's really important to bring that information forward. And I'll be interested in the case that you're referring to. I'll be interested to see, as all that information comes out in that case, what opportunities were missed, perhaps, to identify the behavior of preparation and planning and before the attack actually occurred.
Yeah. Traditionally, the way that just law enforcement works, the nature of, handling calls and then moving on to the others. This is new for a police officer, especially a younger, newer officer. What do you think the best thing is that can help them appreciate just the opportunities that are involved here?
Yeah, I think that that through that close cooperation, because we work, one of our core partners obviously is the law enforcement piece of it, but I think the understanding as we develop and work together that we have a real opportunity here to be proactive.
Yeah.
Like I said, I spent just a little over 20 years in law enforcement, and very reactive. Unfortunately, it's kind of the nature of the beast. But the opportunities to be proactive sometimes are few and far between, and I think this is one of those opportunities. Once we all have an understanding of what it is and what it isn't that we're attempting to do, I think that I do believe that law enforcement will get on board, and not that they're not on board.
No.
I just think that there hasn't been. It is a fairly new discipline. In some respects, in some other respects, it's been around for a while. But
Yeah. I think back of calls that I handled early on in my career where you just have not resolved all of the issues, and that whether it's somebody saying, yeah, we're good now, and as you drive away just dreading or hoping you don't get that other call back and see that things have escalated. But this here truly is an opportunity to look at a situation and be able to engage in it to where you have long-term resolution.
we hope so. I mean, obviously, there's going to still be those cases that we can't impact for
Right.
whatever reason. But at least we have an opportunity to impact as much as we can. And by looking at the situation more holistically and engaging our subject matter partners within the campus community that bring an awful lot of expertise to the solution as well, and developing a collaborative and cohesive management plan, hopefully we can impact more than we're currently impacting.
Yeah. One thing that I'm looking to assist with resources as we move forward is that availability of mental health professionals that we can consult with. And can you share some insight on how that plays into threat assessment and management?
Yeah, we find that oftentimes, and again, we're not clinical practitioners, and therefore we wouldn't be attempting to address specifically any sort of diagnosis. We're really looking at the behavior. But if we can see that behavior is perhaps manifesting out of a mental health crisis, we intend to be able to have consultation available to us to help us navigate that very tricky area of human behavior.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate us having the opportunity to talk about this, to share some information and insight. For me, just anything that we can do to be able to help members of our community and do it in a proactive way is an investment well worth the while.
I appreciate that, Chief. And as we build this, we'll continue to engage the entire community with education and training, and we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of heavy lifting to do, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I love the team you're building too. So thank you.
Appreciate it.